The galaxy laughed at humanity's one ship. Then it showed up. Part 1, the message came through at exactly 3:47 in the morning. Frank Mason was deep in sleep when the sharp beep of his communication device pulled him back to consciousness. He reached over, fumbling in the dark, and checked the screen. Report to Central Command immediately. Frank rolled out of bed, his feet hitting the cold floor. 20 years in the Pan American Space Force had taught him that immediately actually meant immediately. He dressed quickly, splashed water on his face, and was out the door in less than 5 minutes. The streets of New Houston were quiet at this hour. Self-driving vehicles hummed softly as they passed. The massive buildings gleamed under the moonlight. Frank stared at his reflection in the window of his transport pod. At 42, his face showed signs of the stresses of command. His brown hair was starting to gray at the temples. Central Command was a buzz of activity when he arrived. This was unusual for this time of night. Something big was happening. Admiral Patricia Bell was waiting for him. Her usual stern expression was replaced with something that looked almost like excitement. "Commander Mason," she said, leading him into a secure room. "Take a seat. What I'm about to tell you changes everything." Frank sat down, noticing 4 other people already in the room. He recognized 2 of them. Lieutenant Olivia Grant, one of the best navigational officers in the fleet, and Dr. Hank Powell, whose work in xenobiology had earned him multiple awards. "First," Admiral Bell said, "let me introduce the rest of the team. This is Chief Engineer Diane Miller and Communications Specialist Alan Parker." Frank nodded at each of them. Diane was a compact woman with sharp eyes and calloused hands. Alan was younger than the others, probably in his early 30s, with an open, friendly face. Admiral Bell turned on a display. A 3D image of a sleek spaceship appeared. "This," she said, "is the USS Defiant, the first and currently only Earth vessel capable of interstellar travel." Frank leaned forward. The ship was beautiful, smooth lines, no visible weapons ports, but something about it suggested power and speed. "As you know," Bell continued, "we've been monitoring alien communications for decades. We know the galaxy is filled with hundreds of spacefaring civilizations. We know they're aware of us, and we know they've been ignoring us." She paused to let that sink in. "Until now, we've been content to listen and learn. But the President has decided it's time for humanity to claim its place among the stars. Next week, we're going to announce our intention to send the Defiant to the Galactic Conclave." Frank whistled softly. The Conclave was essentially the galaxy's governing body, from what Earth had gathered through intercepted communications. Species from across the Milky Way sent representatives to discuss trade, territorial disputes, and technological exchange. "And the 5 of us?" Olivia asked. "You'll be the crew," Bell replied. "Commander Mason will serve as captain, Lieutenant Grant as navigation and first officer, Dr. Powell as chief science officer, Miller and Parker in their respective specialties." "5 people?" Frank asked. "That's a skeleton crew at best." Bell nodded. "The Defiant has highly automated systems. 5 is all we need." "Permission to speak freely?" Frank asked. Bell nodded. "This is insane. From what we know, every other species at the Conclave has entire fleets. Hundreds, maybe thousands of ships. We're going to show up with 1 vessel and expect to be taken seriously." "That's exactly what we're going to do," Bell said with a hint of a smile. "Sometimes, Commander, it's about quality over quantity." The next few days were a blur of briefings and training. Frank and his new crew learned everything there was to know about the Defiant, or at least everything they were cleared to know. There were parts of the ship, particularly in engineering, that remained off-limits even to them. The global announcement came 3 days later. The President addressed the world from the East Room of the White House. "Today," she said, her voice steady, "humanity takes its first step into the galactic community. For too long we have been watching from the sidelines. Now we enter the game." The response from Earth's population was mixed. Many celebrated this giant leap forward. Others worried about antagonizing potentially hostile alien civilizations. But it was the response from space that caught everyone off guard. Within hours of the announcement, Earth's monitoring stations picked up a surge in alien communications. The translation AIs worked overtime processing the messages. When the results came through, Frank wasn't surprised. They were laughing at us. "Listen to this," Alan said during a briefing. "From the Xylorian Empire, the primitive monkeys believe they can join the conclave with their single pathetic vessel. Perhaps we should display it in a museum of curiosities. And this one," he continued, "from the Vest Collective. Humans have mastered interstellar travel. Next, they'll tell us they've invented the wheel. Message after message, all with the same tone. Ridicule, dismissal, and in some cases, outright hostility. The Xylorians have formally declared that humans will not be recognized or granted representation," Alan finished. A heavy silence fell over the room. "Well," Olivia said finally, "at least we got their attention." Frank looked around at his crew. They were the best Earth had to offer, but they were being asked to represent humanity against civilizations thousands of years more advanced. It seemed impossible. "Commander Mason," Admiral Bell said, breaking the silence. "A word in private." She led him to a smaller room and closed the door. "I know what you're thinking," she said, "that we're sending 5 people in one ship to face an entire galaxy that's already decided we're a joke. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking." Bell smiled. It was a smile that said she knew something he didn't. The Defiant has capabilities that remain classified even to most of its crew. She said quietly, "Capabilities that will change the balance of power significantly." She handed him a small data chip. "This contains information you'll need, but only access it once you're in deep space. The fate of humanity depends on making a strong first impression." 2 weeks later, the day of launch arrived. The Defiant sat on the launch pad, gleaming in the morning sun. News crews from around the world broadcast live as Frank and his crew walked up the boarding ramp. Frank paused at the top, looking back at Earth, blue, beautiful, and so very small in the grand scheme of the universe. He thought about the aliens, who had laughed at humanity's one ship. "They won't be laughing for long," he said softly, then stepped aboard the Defiant. The door closed behind him with a satisfying hiss. The journey to the stars had begun. The galaxy laughed at humanity's one ship. Then it showed up. Part 2. 6 months passed aboard the USS Defiant. Life in deep space had settled into a rhythm. Frank Mason spent his mornings reviewing systems reports, his afternoons planning their approach to the Galactic Conclave, and his evenings staring out at the endless stars. "Another day in the black," Olivia Grant said, floating into the command center. Zero-gravity training had been essential for the crew. Though the Defiant had artificial gravity in most sections, power conservation meant they often turned it off during rest periods. "Any changes to our course?" Frank asked, accepting the tablet she handed him. "Still on track. We should reach the edge of Zigari space in about 6 hours. Frank nodded. The Zigari were the first alien civilization whose territory they would cross. Earth's long-range monitoring had identified them as traitors, not warriors, which made them the safest first contact option. "Dr. Powell wants to see you in the lab," Olivia added. Something about unusual readings. The science lab was Hank Powell's domain. Screens covered the walls, each showing different data streams. The scientist's eyes were bright with excitement when Frank entered. "Commander, look at this." Hank pointed to a screen showing what looked like a tangled mess of colored lines. "This is subspace communication traffic. The volume has increased by 300% in the last 24 hours. "Meaning?" "They're talking about us. A lot." Frank frowned. "I thought we were running silent. How do they know we're here?" "Our engine signature, it's distinctive." Hank tapped another screen. "They've never seen anything like our propulsion system before." Before Frank could respond, Alan's voice came over the ship's communication system. "Captain to the bridge. We have company." Frank and Hank rushed to the command center. On the main screen was a ship. Its design was unlike anything in Earth's records, curved like a seashell with spines extending from its surface. Zigari scout vessel, Alan said. They're scanning us. Defensive systems? Frank asked. Hull composition is blocking their scans. Diane Miller replied from her engineering station. They can see we're here, but they can't see inside us. Frank watched as the alien ship adjusted its position, clearly trying different scanning frequencies. They're curious, Olivia noted. Captain, Alan said suddenly, they're hailing us. Frank took a deep breath. This would be humanity's first. Direct contact with an alien species put them through. The screen flickered and an alien face appeared. It had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, blue-green skin, and what looked like gill slits on its neck. Alan's fingers flew over his console as he activated the translation software developed from years of intercepted communications. The alien spoke, its voice a series of clicks and whistles. After a moment, the computer translated, "Unknown vessel. Identify purpose and species." Frank stood straight. "I am Commander Frank Mason of the Earth vessel Defiant. We are humans, traveling to the Galactic Conclave." There was a pause as the translation went the other way. The alien's upper eyes blinked rapidly. Humans. Yes, the single-ship species. The translator gave the words a tone of amusement. "Why do you travel through Zigari space?" "We seek peaceful passage to the Conclave," Frank replied. "We mean no harm." More clicks and whistles. "Unusual engine signature. Unknown hull composition. Explain." Frank glanced at Diane, who shook her head slightly. "Our technology is our own," Frank said. "Just as yours is yours." The alien seemed to consider this acceptable. However, standard procedure for new species requires compliance test. "Compliance test?" Frank repeated, not liking the sound of that. The answer came in the form of energy. A pulse rippled from the Zigari ship, striking the Defiant. The lights flickered. "They're trying to disable us," Diane said, checking her screens. "Standard power drain pulse." Frank tensed, expecting alarms to sound. Instead, Diane looked up with a smile. "The pulse has been absorbed by the hull. No damage. Power levels actually increased by 2%. On screen, the Zigari commander's gill slits flared in what might have been surprise. "Your ship," the alien began, then stopped. "Interesting, very interesting. We would prefer not to be tested again," Frank said firmly. "No further tests needed. Safe journey to the Conclave, humans. The galaxy watches your progress with new interest." The communication ended and the Zigari ship moved away. "Well," Hank said into the silence that followed. "That went better than expected." Frank turned to Diane. "The hull absorbed their energy weapon and converted it to power. That wasn't in any briefing I received." Diane looked uncomfortable. "There's a restricted section in engineering. I've been working on some experimental systems. Show me, now." The restricted section was sealed behind a heavy door that required Diane's handprint, retinal scan, and voice command to open. Inside was a laboratory unlike anything else on the ship. At its center sat a glowing blue cylinder. "What am I looking at?" Frank asked. "The real heart of the Defiant," Diane said. "For 30 years, Earth governments kept it secret. In 2127, an alien ship crashed in the Pacific Ocean. Most of it was destroyed, but this power core remained intact." Frank stared at her. "We reverse-engineered alien technology?" Diane nodded. "It's why we only needed one ship. The Defiant utilizes technology decades, maybe centuries ahead of what the rest of humanity knows exists. Why wasn't I told?" "Need to know basis," Diane said. "And now you need to know. What just happened with the Zigari? That's going to spread. Fast." She was right. Over the next weeks, the Defiant encountered 3 more alien vessels. Each kept a respectful distance. None attempted any more tests. Subspace. "Chatter is going crazy," Alan reported one morning. "The story is growing with each retelling. Some are saying we shrugged off a weapon that could disable a small moon." "That's an exaggeration," Diane said. "Maybe. But perception matters. The Xylorians have doubled their patrol ships near the Conclave. They're specifically watching for us. Frank fingered the data chip Admiral Bell had given him. He'd accessed it a month into their journey. Its contents had kept him awake for 3 nights after. "We're 2 weeks from the conclave," he said. "It's time the whole crew knows what we're really capable of." He looked around at the 4 people who had become more than colleagues. They were his team, his friends. "The galaxy laughed when they heard about humanity's one ship," he said. "Let's show them exactly why we only needed one." Olivia grinned. "I bet they won't be laughing much longer." Outside the viewports, stars streaked by as the Defiant continued its journey toward destiny, carrying with it the hopes of an entire planet and secrets that would soon change the galaxy forever. The galaxy laughed at humanity's one ship. Then it showed up. Part 3. The USS Defiant dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a flash of blue light. Before them floated a massive structure. It looked like a giant wheel in space, with spokes, connecting to a central hub. Lights of all colors sparkled across its surface. Ships of various sizes and shapes moved around it like bees around a hive. "The Galactic Conclave," Frank said quietly. "It's even bigger than our scans suggested." Olivia whistled. "I count at least 500 ships in the immediate area. And I count 12 Xylorian warships moving to intercept us," Alan added. Frank watched as the alien vessels arranged themselves in a blockade formation. The Xylorian ships were sleek, predatory designs. Each one was at least 3 times the size of the Defiant. "They really don't want us here," Hank observed from his science station. "Captain," Alan said, "we're receiving a transmission from the lead Xylorian vessel." Frank straightened his uniform. "Put them through." The main screen filled with the image of a Xylorian. Unlike the Zigari, this alien appeared almost reptilian, with scaled skin, vertical pupils, and a crest of spines atop its head. "Attention, Earth vessel," the alien said, its voice translated into a deep, rumbling tone. "This is Admiral Vrax of the Xylorian Empire. You have entered restricted space. Return to your homeworld immediately. You have not been invited to the conclave." Frank met the alien's gaze. "Admiral Vrax, I am Commander Frank Mason of the Earth vessel Defiant. We do not need an invitation. We are here to represent Earth, whether you like it or not." Vrax's scales darkened, a sign of anger according to their intelligence briefings. "You will turn back now, or we will fire upon your vessel." "Admiral," Frank replied, "I strongly advise against that course of action." The Xylorian cut the transmission. "Well," Olivia said, "that went about as expected." "Battle stations," Frank ordered. "Diane, activate defensive systems." The crew moved with practiced efficiency. Months of drills had prepared them for this moment. "They're charging weapons," Alan reported. Frank nodded. "Hold position. Do not return fire unless I give the order." The first Xylorian blast hit the Defiant head-on. The ship shuddered, but the lights didn't even flicker. "Shield status?" Frank asked. "Shields holding at 98%, Diane reported. "The hull is absorbing most of the energy." 3 more Xylorian ships opened fire. Beams of energy lashed across space and struck the Defiant from multiple angles. "Shields at 95%, Diane said, sounding almost bored. "At this rate, they could fire for hours without doing serious damage." Frank allowed himself a small smile. "Olivia, plot a course directly to the conclave docking area. Standard." "Speed. Right through their blockade?" she asked, already inputting the commands. "Right through it." The Defiant began to move forward, straight toward the wall of Xylorian warships. They continued to fire, their weapons having little effect on the Earth vessel. "They're adjusting formation," Alan said. "Trying to box us in." "Evasive pattern Delta," Frank ordered. Olivia's hands danced across her controls. The Defiant responded, instantly, weaving between 2 Xylorian ships with a grace that belied its size. "They didn't expect us to be so maneuverable," Hank observed. A massive Xylorian cruiser moved directly into their path, weapons ports glowing as they prepared to fire at point-blank range. "Hard to port," Frank commanded. The Defiant banked sharply, avoiding the cruiser's main guns. As they passed alongside it, the Xylorian ship fired all its secondary weapons. The Defiant rocked under the impact. "Shields at 87%, Diane reported. No damage to critical systems. Frank opened a channel to all the Xylorian ships. This is Commander Mason. We have no wish to fight. We are proceeding to the Conclave as is our right. Your weapons cannot stop us. I suggest you stand down before someone gets hurt. There was no response, but the intensity of the firing increased. They're getting desperate, Olivia said. And desperate people make mistakes, Frank replied. Keep going. The Defiant pushed forward, absorbing hit after hit but never slowing down. As they approached the outer docking ring of the Conclave station, a new voice came over their communications. Earth. Vessel. This is Conclave Security. Cease your approach immediately. Conclave Security, Frank responded. We are a peaceful delegation from Earth seeking representation. The Xylorian blockade fired upon us without provocation. There was a pause. Then, understood, Earth vessel. You are granted emergency docking clearance at Bay 94. Conclave peacekeepers will meet you there. As the Defiant approached the assigned docking bay, the Xylorian ships finally broke off their attack. They maintained a distance. Weapons, still trained on the Earthship. They're not happy, Alan said, monitoring communications. But they won't risk firing near the station. The docking procedure was smooth. Clamps engaged, securing the Defiant to the massive space station. Airlocks aligned and sealed. Frank gathered his crew near the main airlock. They had changed into their dress uniforms, dark blue with gold trim, the Earth flag patch on their shoulders. This is it, he said. The moment Earth joins the galactic community, remember your training. Stay alert, stay together, and no matter what happens, maintain your composure. What if they try to arrest us? Hank asked. They won't, Frank said, with more confidence than he felt. We've done nothing wrong. The airlock cycled open. On the other side stood a group of aliens. They weren't Xylorians, but a species they'd never seen before. Tall, slender beings with silvery skin and 4 arms. I am Zin, head of Conclave Security, one of them said. Your presence has caused quite a disturbance. We apologize for any inconvenience, Frank replied smoothly. But we are here as representatives of Earth. Follow me, Zin said. The emergency session of the Conclave begins in 1 hour. You will be the main topic. The humans were led through corridors filled with aliens of all descriptions. Some had tentacles, others wings. Some floated above the ground while others clanked along on mechanical legs. All of them stopped to stare at the humans. Is it just me? Olivia whispered. Or do some of them look afraid of us? Frank nodded slightly. Our ship just withstood an attack from 12 Xylorian warships without firing back. That's bound to make an impression. They were brought to a massive circular chamber. Hundreds of platforms were arranged in tiered rings, each holding representatives from different species. A low murmur filled the air as the humans entered. Zin led them to an empty platform near the center. Wait here. As the security chief left, Frank and his crew found themselves alone in the spotlight, surrounded by the representatives of hundreds of alien civilizations. Now what? Alan asked quietly. Frank looked around at the gathered assembly, making eye contact with as many aliens as he could. Now, he said, we make humanity's voice heard. He stepped forward and spoke in a clear, strong voice that echoed through the chamber. We come in peace, Frank announced to the assembly, but we will not be ignored. The chamber fell silent, all eyes on the 5 humans who had arrived in a single ship and changed the galaxy forever. The galaxy laughed at humanity's one ship. Then it showed up. Part 4 silence hung in the chamber for several long seconds after Frank's words. Then, like a dam breaking, the room erupted with noise. Hundreds of alien delegates began talking at once, their translator devices creating a cacophony of overlapping voices. A loud tone rang out, silencing the chamber. At the central platform, a large alien with purple skin and 7 eyes raised its hands. Order, it said. We will have order in this conclave. Frank recognized the species from their briefings. This was a Medusan. one of the oldest races in the galaxy and the current head of the conclave. I am High Arbiter Vox, the Medusan continued. This emergency session will now address the unexpected arrival of humans. The translator gave the word a curious intonation. From one of the higher platforms, a Xylorian rose. Unlike Admiral Vrax, this one wore elaborate robes covered in symbols of office. Supreme Delegate Krax Zur of the Xylorian Empire requests to speak, announced an automated voice. Granted, said Vox. Krax Zur's cold eyes fixed on the humans. Esteemed delegates of the conclave, what we are witnessing today is nothing less than an act of aggression. These primitive mammals have forced their way into our sacred gathering, ignoring established protocols and defying direct orders to leave. The Xylorian's voice rose. They come in one ship, one, and expect to be treated as equals. They have no fleet, no history of interstellar achievement, no alliances, no trade agreements. They are children playing at being adults. Several delegates nodded in agreement. Others looked uncertain. Furthermore, Krax Zur continued, their vessel possesses technology that is clearly stolen. No emerging species develops shield systems capable of withstanding a Xylorian battle group. They must have acquired this technology through theft or salvage. Frank stepped forward. Permission to respond, he said firmly. Vox considered him for a moment, then nodded. The human may speak. Our technology is our own, Frank said, his voice steady. Developed through human ingenuity and effort. Yes, we have only one ship, but as you've seen, one ship is all we needed to come here. He looked around the chamber. Earth does not seek conflict. We seek recognition and representation, the right to trade, to share knowledge, to participate in galactic affairs. A small bird-like alien rose from a nearby platform. The Chrysali Confederation finds this reasonable. Let them prove themselves worthy through the proper channels. There are no proper channels for uninvited species, Krax Zur hissed. I move for the immediate expulsion of these primitives. Let them return when they have something to offer besides arrogance. High Arbiter Vox nodded. A motion has been presented. The conclave will vote on the expulsion of the human delegation. As the voting began, Frank turned to his crew. This isn't going well, Alan whispered. We knew it wouldn't be easy, Frank replied. While they're focused on the vote, we need to learn as much as we can about this place. He turned to Olivia and Alan. I want you two to explore. Find out what you can about the Xylorians and their influence here. What about station security? Olivia asked. Use the diplomatic passes Zinn gave us. They should grant you access to public areas. Stay in contact and don't take unnecessary risks. As Olivia and Alan slipped away, the voting continued. Frank could see the results displayed on screens throughout the chamber. It wasn't looking good for Earth. 3 hours later, High Arbiter Vox announced the result. The motion passes. The human delegation is ordered to depart the conclave within 6 standard hours. Failure to comply will result in consequences. Frank's communicator buzzed. It was Olivia. Captain, you need to hear this, she said urgently. We found something in the public archives. The Xylorians have been systematically eliminating emerging, spacefaring civilizations for centuries. Species that might one day challenge their dominance simply disappear. Can you prove it? Frank asked. We're downloading the data now. It's all here in their own records, just buried under layers of classification. Frank nodded to himself. Get back to the meeting area. We need to. A group of Xylorian security officers approached their platform. Human delegation, one said. You will be escorted to your vessel immediately. Frank held up a hand. We have 6 hours according to the High Arbiter's ruling. Plans have changed, the Xylorian said. Admiral Vrax has ordered your immediate removal for security reasons. Frank looked at Hank and Diane. It seems our Xylorian friends are in a hurry to get rid of us. Captain, Diane said quietly, if they force us back to the Defiant, we can activate the contingency plan. Frank nodded. Very well. We'll go with you, he told the Xylorian guards. As they were led away, Frank sent a message to Olivia. Meet us at the ship. Bring the evidence. The corridors were eerily empty as they were marched toward the docking bay. Too empty. "This isn't right," Hank whispered. "Where is everyone?" "I suspect the Xylorians have cleared the area," Frank replied. "They don't want witnesses." When they reached a junction, the lead guard held up a hand. "This way." Frank frowned. "That's not the route to our docking bay. Change of plans," the guard said flatly. "Admiral Vrax wishes to speak with you first." Frank exchanged glances with Diane and Hank. This was bad. "Split up," Frank whispered. "Get to the ship." Hank suddenly stumbled, falling against one of the guards. In the confusion, Diane darted down a side corridor. 2 guards immediately gave chase. "Run," Frank shouted to Hank, who took off in another direction. Frank found himself surrounded by 3 Xylorian guards, their weapons drawn. "That was foolish," the lead guard said. "Now your friends will be hunted down and killed instead of enjoying a quick execution with you." They brought Frank to a secure room where Admiral Vrax was waiting. "Commander Mason," Vrax said, "I must admit I'm impressed by your ship. Its technology is remarkable. Before we destroy it, perhaps you'll tell me who really built it for you." "I already told you it's human technology," Vrax laughed, a harsh sound. "No emerging species develop such capabilities on their own. You had help, or you stole it." "Believe what you want," Frank said. "It doesn't matter. Soon your ship will be space debris, your crew will be dead, and Earth will serve as an example of what happens to upstart species that don't know their place." Meanwhile, Diane had managed to find a communications hub. Using the skills she'd learned during their months of preparation, she bypassed the security and barricaded herself inside. "This is Chief Engineer Diane Miller of the Earth vessel Defiant." She broadcast on all Conclave channels. "The Xylorian Empire has been systematically eliminating emerging civilizations. I am transmitting proof of their crimes to all delegates now." On the other side of the station, Hank had found Olivia and Alan, who were hiding from Xylorian search parties. "They've got the captain," Hank told them, breathing hard. "And they plan to destroy the Defiant." Olivia's face hardened. "Not if I can help it." She activated her emergency communicator. "This is Lieutenant Olivia Grant, authorization code Omega-6 Delta. Activate Protocol Lazarus." Back in the secure room, Frank watched Admiral Vrax's face change as reports began coming in. "What have you done?" Vrax demanded, seizing Frank by the throat. "Nothing yet," Frank replied calmly. "But I wouldn't stand too close to me if I were you." The wall behind them exploded inward. Through the smoke, a figure appeared. It was humanoid but clearly mechanical, an advanced combat drone from the Defiant. Vrax's eyes widened in shock. "Impossible." "You should have learned by now," Frank said as the drone incapacitated the guards with stunning speed. "Don't underestimate humans." As alarms blared throughout the station, the true nature of humanity's one ship was finally about to be revealed. The galaxy laughed at humanity's one ship. Then it showed up. Part 5 chaos erupted throughout the Conclave station. Emergency alarms blared as confused delegates rushed to safety. The combat drone escorted Frank through the corridors, its sensors scanning for threats. 2 more drones had joined them, each moving with fluid precision. "Status report," Frank said into his communicator. "Diane here. I'm still in the communications hub. The evidence is out. Every delegate has received copies of the Xylorian extinction program." Olivia reporting. "We're headed back to the Defiant. Station security is in disarray." Frank nodded to himself. "Meet me there. It's time for the main event." When they reached the docking bay, Frank saw that the area was swarming with Xylorian troops. They had surrounded the Defiant, weapons ready. Frank stepped into view, flanked by the combat drones. "That's my ship you're threatening." Admiral Vrax stepped forward, rage evident in his posture. "Your pathetic attempt at rebellion ends here, human. Your ship is surrounded. Your evidence means nothing. We control half the delegates through fear or finance." "You may be right about your influence," Frank said calmly, "but you're wrong about my ship." He raised his communicator. "Defiant, execute Protocol Genesis." For a moment, nothing happened. The Xylorians laughed. Then the Defiant began to change. Sections of the hull shifted and reconfigured. Panels slid open, revealing weapon systems that had been hidden beneath the surface. The ship seemed to grow larger as previously concealed modules extended outward. What had appeared to be a sleek, diplomatic vessel transformed before their eyes into something far more formidable. "What is this trickery?" Vrax demanded, taking an involuntary step back. "No tricks," Frank said. "Just human ingenuity." The Defiant's main hatch opened. From inside emerged more combat drones, forming a protective corridor for Frank's crew to reach the ship. Olivia, Alan, and Hank ran through, followed by Diane, who had made her way from the communications hub. "You lied," Vrax accused. "You said you came in peace." "We did," Frank replied. "We still do. But peace doesn't mean we come unprepared." A holographic projection appeared above the Defiant, visible throughout the docking bay. It showed Krax Zur, the Xylorian Supreme Delegate, speaking privately with other officials. "The humans must be eliminated before others get the same idea," Zur's voice echoed. "We've erased 17 emerging species in the last century alone. One more won't matter." The recording continued, revealing in devastating detail the Xylorian policy of systematically destroying potential rivals before they could reach the stars. Frank turned to the gathered aliens, many of whom had come to see the confrontation. "We discovered this evidence in your own archives. The Xylorian Empire has been committing genocide against emerging civilizations for centuries, all while pretending to uphold galactic peace." Vrax lunged forward, weapon raised. "I'll kill you." "Myself!" One of the combat drones moved with blinding speed, disarming the Admiral without harming him. "You could have," Frank said, "but you won't." He addressed his next words to the station's communication system, knowing they would be broadcast throughout the conclave. "This is Commander Frank Mason of Earth. We came with one ship not because we're primitive, but because that's all we needed to send. Humanity has chosen peace for centuries despite developing technologies that could have dominated our region of space." Outside the station, alarms sounded as a Xylorian battle fleet moved into attack position. "Captain," Olivia called from the Defiant's hatch, "Xylorian reinforcements are preparing to fire on the station." Frank nodded grimly. It seems Admiral Vrax would rather destroy the conclave than face the truth. He strode up the ramp into the Defiant. Within moments, the transformed ship detached from the docking clamps and moved out into space. On the main screen, they could see the Xylorian fleet, 20 warships arranged in attack formation. At their center was a massive flagship, its weapons powering up to fire on the conclave station. "They're going to try to destroy the evidence and anyone who's seen it," Hank said. "Not if we stop them," Frank replied. "Diane, activate offensive systems. Target their weapons only." The Defiant moved with surprising speed for its size, positioning itself between the Xylorian fleet and the station. "They're firing," Alan shouted. "Now." "Diane," Frank ordered. The Defiant released a pulse of energy unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. It washed over the Xylorian ships, and one by one their weapon systems went dark. The vessels themselves remained intact, but completely disarmed. "What did we just do?" Hank asked in wonder. "Targeted EMP technology," Diane explained. "It disables weapons and propulsion systems without harming the crews, but Admiral Vrax wasn't finished. His flagship, though damaged, launched a suicide run directly at the conclave station." "He's going to ram the station," Olivia cried. "Not today," Frank said. "Diane, activate the fold." "Sir, we've never tested it in combat," Diane warned. "No time like the present." Diane nodded and pressed a sequence of commands. The space around the Defiant began to shimmer as if heat was distorting reality itself. A small, controlled wormhole opened directly in the path of Vrax's flagship. The massive ship entered it and disappeared, only to reappear moments later in empty space far from the station and with no momentum. Gasps of astonishment came through the communication channels from those watching on the station. "Did we just teleport their ship?" Alan asked. "Not exactly," Diane replied. "We generated a localized wormhole. It's the technology we use for our faster-than-light travel, but focused externally." Frank opened a channel to the conclave. This is Commander Mason. The threat has been neutralized. No Xylorian ships have been destroyed. Their crews are unharmed, though they may need a tow home. The response came from High Arbiter Vox himself. Commander Mason, the Conclave requests your immediate return. It seems we have much to discuss. 3 days later, the humans stood once again in the great chamber of the Conclave. This time they were not on trial. Instead, they were honored guests. High Arbiter Vox addressed the assembly. For too long, the Xylorian Empire has manipulated this body while committing unspeakable crimes against emerging species. Thanks to the humans, this can now end. A vote was called. When the results appeared, they were nearly unanimous. Earth would be granted full membership in the Galactic Conclave. As the formalities concluded, delegates from dozens of species approached. The humans, eager to establish diplomatic relations, Frank watched with satisfaction. Not bad for a species with just one ship, he said to his crew. About that, Olivia said with a smile. Admiral Bell sent a message. The rest of the fleet is ready whenever we need them. Let's hope we won't, Frank replied. But it's good to know they're there. Dr. Powell looked out at the stars visible through the chamber's massive windows. They laughed at humanity's one ship, he said thoughtfully. They're not laughing anymore, Frank finished. Diane grinned. And we still haven't shown them our actual fleet. As delegates continued to gather around them, Frank reflected on how far they had come. From being mocked as primitives to being welcomed as equals, all because humanity had done what it did best: surprise everyone with its resourcefulness, courage, and unwillingness to be underestimated. The galaxy had laughed at humanity's one ship. Now the galaxy would learn to respect